Well, I'm still Philip Crum, co-founder of AMP, and that over there on the other side of your screen is Kathleen Mills, licensed professional counselor supervisor, also co-founder of AMP. AMP is the Association for Mental Health Professionals. That would be us. And we've been looking forward to today because we're going to talk about the FTC, the case, FTC versus WPATH. And this ought to be a good one. WPATH, for those who don't know, you want to tell them what WPATH is?
Okay. WPATH is the overseer of the gender affirming care protocol that supports the mutilation of children.
Yeah. It's the self-appointed professional organization based on nothing but
Lies and deception.
unfounded consensus is the word I'm looking for. There we go.
Yeah, we're going to make it up as we go along, and we're going to be professional about it and to
you're going to believe it.
allure counselors that this is the best thing ever for little kids.
The case, FTC versus WPATH, the case is aimed at killing the standard of care version 8, SOC 8, which I view as we started this discussion a time before, but we were rudely interrupted by the internet. So we're starting again, but I had compared it to the Star Wars Death Star. Yeah. Remember the big planet with the little satellite dish buried in the side? It could send out a death ray and kill anybody, right? It was powered by some sort of a generator in the very middle of the planet. And that's what the standard of care is. It's that little generator that's running everything. Everything downstream of WPATH is basing its business model, its right to exist on this standard of care. So if you can stab that beast in the heart and kill standard of care, you've killed the beast.
Yes.
Do you like that?
I love it.
I could work the bar scene in here too if you want.
That's exactly what this lawsuit is. Before we start, Philip, I really want to encourage all counselors, including associates or interns, even practicum students, if you're listening to this, is to actually download the entire lawsuit and read it. And why am I asking you to read a legal document? This is directly impacting our profession. Actually, the gender affirming care phenomenon, the social contagion that it's always been, my personal opinion, our profession has been hoodwinked captured and hoodwinked, thinking that this was a professional way to go about things when children who are growing up and are experiencing confusion, that we have to honor that confusion, which starts the whole mutilation process. So this lawsuit that was rendered, I believe in June of 2026, it was filed in the Northern District of Texas in Fort Worth Division. It's a federal lawsuit. This has got teeth that the Federal Trade Commission, with the addition of 4 states, are really aggressively putting together a case against WPATH.
Is this a civil or criminal case? I was thinking this was a civil case.
I believe it's a civil case.
Yeah,
however,
right.
The Federal Trade Commission is the entity that oversees commerce in the United States, maybe even across the pond, if you will. And it has been made known to them that WPATH is less than desirable because of the amount of deception. It has caused great harm to many people. And there are 4 states that are involved to help support Federal Trade Commission's.
Well, let's do this before you jump ahead too far. So a statement you made just a minute ago, I'm not sure if the FTC has jurisdiction overseas. I'm pretty sure they don't. But what they do have, the outcome of this case is going to have definite ripple effects all around the globe for anybody that's been following WPATH and utilizing their standard of care. You mentioned earlier that this makes a really, really good ethics study for those, especially who are new to the industry. What does this have to do with ethics? The obvious question, the obvious answer is
ethics is usually tied to code of conduct in our profession. You know, what is a good ethical decision in how I handle a case, a client, and their treatment modalities. I mean, counseling profession has a myriad of treatment modalities that we've been told throughout our career and continuing education is the standard of how to do this. Well, you've got Federal Trade Commission now with ample evidence to suggest that this particular type of treatment for children and adults too, who want to do the gender affirming care standard of care protocol has been
Are you trying to tell me that lying to your clients is not a good ethical path to take?
correct. The ethical due diligence of a counselor to me is informed consent and being able to freely talk about all the types of things in a certain treatment modality, the good, the bad, the ugly. I think our profession has been captured into thinking that we can't challenge that. We just have to hook, line, sinker, believe it because it must be true because the research says fill in the blank.
Somebody says the research says.
Correct. All we have been spoon fed to believe that, is evidence based research or is it somebody's opinion?
Right. So there are 4 states and the FTC that are suing WPATH. Why is the FTC involved?
Well, it's deceptive. It's about deception of practice
Across state lines.
across state lines and has had terrible damage to the consumer by way of deceiving someone to think it would be a good idea to permanently mutilate someone's body for the glory of something else, changing a girl to a boy. And we know that there's only 2 sexes, so this doesn't even make sense. But there's enough evidence to suggest that the way that they packaged it, the way that they delivered services, the way that they persuaded somebody to go ahead and do this was a huge, huge moneymaker by way of deception. And then they uncovered that the science wasn't even there to support what they're promoting.
Each of the 4 states pretty much brings protection or potential protection for their own states, but it doesn't apply to the other 46. So the FTC brings in a nationwide jurisdiction, or
Yes,
component
component.
to this whole thing.
If you look at the states for counselors, every state, their mission, their primary reason for existing is to protect and defend and cover Joe Citizen. And so these 4 states, Alaska, Iowa, Nebraska, and Texas, have demonstrated in this lawsuit the horrific damages to Joe Citizen. So then you put on the Federal Trade Commission, which, Philip, you're right, it's federal. Like the rest of the union needs to be aware of this too, because it's happening in other states. It just so happens that these 4 states have enough evidence to assist with the Federal Trade Commission's involvement because
Yeah.
it does warrant Federal Trade Commission to really look at this now because it's happening in every single state.
One permanent injunction at the federal level covers all 50 states, where the individual states, their authority or influence stops at the borders of their states for the most part. That doesn't mean other states won't follow suit.
This podcast is not about this, but it to me, Philip, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's similar to the SCOTUS decision, Childs v. Salazar, which took place in Colorado. But the SCOTUS decision has ramifications that now includes all 50 states.
All right.
So this is the same thing to me.
Yeah, in that respect, you're correct. A Supreme Court ruling affects all 50 states. They don't get to pick and choose. This case, because the FTC, the Fed, is involved, would impact all 50 states. The 4 states that are participating, Alaska, Iowa, Nebraska, and Texas, are doing so because each of them brings particular talents or skills to the table. For example, Texas has treble damages. So when this case gets to the point where the FTC has essentially won the case and it's time to determine damages, whatever the ridiculous number is going to be that WPATH has to pay, it's triple that in Texas. This is an existential issue, and that's just one of the things that Texas brings to the table. So WPATH has 3 entities. There's WPATH Texas, WPATH Illinois, and then
U.S. PATH.
U.S. PATH, yes, which is an unincorporated creation, but it operates as a separate individual entity. So why are we suing all 3 of those entities?
Well, they're all related to one another and they have commingled their funds. That's a big piece of the puzzle. They're not as separate as you would think. And as you read the suit, you will read and learn that they really commingle just about everything together, including board members and all that. So
it's called a common enterprise.
Correct.
Apparently that's a legal term. Common enterprise,
Right.
or a conglomerate operation.
Mm-hmm.
A whole big incestuous can of fish worms,
Yes, right.
all in bed together. And in fact, because they call themselves an association, and they have an association company that operates them, takes care of all the day to day, this, that, and the other. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it in front of me, but it's in my notes.
Veritas. It's called
Veritas is the name
Veritas.
of this thing. And the CEO of Veritas is on the board of directors for WPATH, calling
Yeah, there's a
shots.
few others on
Oh,
Veritas
yeah.
that are also commingled in the board of directors in this common enterprise. So it's not as separate as one would think. I mean, this is a huge awakening of how intermingled not only
Hmm.
Veritas is, but the WPATH Texas, WPATH Illinois, and the US PATH. They're all
Hmm.
unified in a common denominator, and that is a money making scheme for
They're
those who wish
yeah,
to
they're
participate in
right.
mutilating people.
Right. The reason they're being sued collectively is so that they can't wiggle out of anything.
Right.
You sue WPATH Texas and they'll shut down and just operate as just a shell company, one
Mhm.
employee doing nothing to nobody, and move all those operations to another entity that hadn't been sued and wasn't covered. So this is just a way of leaving no wiggle room.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
pretty huge and very remarkable that this lawsuit was able to combine these four. Well,
Hmm.
the common enterprise, let's just put it that way. It is the Death Star.
Yeah, see, they're a common enterprise because they share the same professional management company. They have overlapping officers and directors and executives, as you just mentioned. They have intermingled finances and tax identity, shared branding, website, public identity, control and purpose. They probably share same office facilities. So that's about as tight as you can get.
Yeah. I want to read you something, Philip, because
All
I think
right.
this is important with the Federal Trade Commission. And I'm just going to read it here. But this is a classic Federal Trade Commission pleading tactic used in a multi entity deceptive practices causes. Think of multi level marketers or a shell company web or a pyramid scheme. So,
They've used this model before, I think is the point you're making.
right.
They've used this, round them all up. It's almost like going after the mob families in New York. You round them all up and get them all at one time. Anyway, all right. Why sue them all together? Complete injunctive relief. One permanent injunction by the FTC can shut down the entire apparatus, the standard of care distribution, the distribution of the idea itself, its websites, training, membership benefits, insurance advocacy work, shut the whole darn thing down.
Even to the point of causing insurance companies to not pay for this anymore. And that was one of the schemes, was to involve the insurance companies to actually pay for human destruction.
WPATH convinced the insurance industries that their standard of care was based on science. The insurance companies, I assume, saw that
Mhm.
there was money to be made, and hey, here we go.
I don't know how they make money if they're paying out. So
Well, they're
I've
taking in
always wondered that.
what do your insurance premiums run every month? They're taking in more
Well,
than they're paying out.
that's right. And my insurance premiums are through the roof, and you are paying for this type of mutilation of humans.
So
So,
WPATH has three entities. Two of them are incorporated, one in Texas, one in Illinois. The case is in Texas because WPATH Texas is the primary in the complaint. So that's why it's in Texas. Why do they want it in Texas?
well, they forgot to close down the Texas corporation and just move everything to Illinois, and that's pretty scathing. They just didn't think about doing that. So
That's
it
that's
was
what yeah,
filed it had to be
that
filed in Fort Worth.
well, it didn't have to be. It was filed in Fort Worth, but the reason that it was filed in Texas, the fact they didn't close down the Texas corporation allowed it to be filed in Texas, but they could have filed in Illinois, but they
Mm,
filed in Texas
good point.
because it's a friendlier environment. There's already been rulings of various things in Texas over the last 2 years that are very friendly to the non-woke, non-gender affirming care. And
Right.
so plus the treble damages, so that's why we're doing that. Okay, let's talk about the plaintiff's key arguments. There are 4 key arguments in this case, and there are also, we're going to get to this in a minute, 10 key deceptive claims made by WPATH. But the plaintiff's key arguments, the first one is that WPATH developed its standard of care without regard for scientific protocols.
Yeah, read that again, Philip. Let that sink in, whoever's listening to this.
WPATH developed its standard of care version 8 without regard for scientific protocols. They totally ignored scientific protocols, came up with a standard of care based on consensus based not on scientific protocols.
Yeah.
What's a consensus that's based on nothing worth?
Well, this is how they were very creative in developing the standard of care by the element of persuasion. Hey, we have the standard of care. However, we got there, it really doesn't matter. Again, I'm going to go back to we have been taught the standard of care without questioning it because surely it's true, right?
They wouldn't lie.
They wouldn't lie to me. But the thing that's really harsh here is UPath deliberately abandoned or corrupted recognized evidence-based guidelines methodology. They deliberately corrupted the research that they said that they did in order to create what they had in mind, which was the standard of care 8.
Right. Apparently, there's something called GRADE, GRADE, grading of recommendations, assessment, development, evaluation, which is the process, the protocol that you use to develop your findings. And they just said, you know what, that's not working for what trying to promote. So let's just throw that out the window. They also commissioned a John Hopkins evidence review team, paid money to John Hopkins to come up with material. Then they suppressed or refused to publish those results because they weren't favorable to
Their agenda.
their narrative. Yeah.
You see how this is working? I hope you're seeing how this is working because they're going to ignore the science and do what they're going to do in order to create the standard of care
Mm-hmm.
that UPath thinks is a good idea. They just think it's a good idea, but I think that it's more sinister than that. So as you continue to read this lawsuit, which I encourage all counselors to do, your head is going to explode.
Mm-hmm. It's 123 pages long. Took you an afternoon to get through it because it's not like reading a novel. You can get through it pretty quickly, but you can also download the PowerPoint in the show notes below. The 123-page document's also in the show notes, but you can go through the PowerPoint and get an overview of the 18 chapters that are in this 123-page document. The really juicy stuff is in chapters 5 and 15. Is it 5 or 8?
I don't know.
It's 5. It's 5 and 15, and that's what we're going over today, actually.
Mhm.
So and there's some other guidelines. The National Academy of Medicine, they ignored all of those guidelines.
Mhm.
Anytime they got information that didn't fit their narrative that they didn't like, they find a
Right.
way to mark it as low grade or moderately this or not quite that and leave it out of the final report. So the only thing in the final report is the one or two things that did fit their narrative in a standalone mode and
Yeah.
claim, oh, look, we've got strong evidence here. Oh, we've got strong evidence. Well, then it must be okay. No, it's not. So that's the first of 4 points that they developed their standard of care without regard for scientific protocols. The second one is that WPATH knows that they knew that its recommendations are not supported by scientific evidence or a medical consensus. So not only did they disregard scientific protocols, number 2 says it wasn't an accident. They knew what they were doing.
It was very deliberate, and it's shocking when you read it. It's
What
just shocking.
What kind of evidence do they have for that?
They were going to manipulate whatever they were going to manipulate in order to get to the end goal. And the end goal was the Ponzi scheme that involved many, many people making tons of money while mutilating humans.
The evidence that they knew that they were ignoring the scientific protocols is their own internal communications, their emails, their meeting notes, their Slack logs, their chat logs. It shows that the WPATH leadership knew what they were doing, and they did it anyway, and they've been doing this for a long time.
So I think
Go ahead.
which to your point, Philip, you see the deception. This is about deceptive practices.
Mm-hmm.
You see how this was made up and it was deceptive from the get-go, and the suit, it just unravels it all. And you walk away going, this was very intentional.
Yeah, they ignored remember the CAS report?
Well, that's the thing. I think the standard of care 8 came out after the CAS report, I think. But even the CAS report did not stop UPath.
And
It
they
did not
ignored.
stop. They went full bore after the CAS report. And then what happened in our profession during that time? Academia, professional CEUs, conferences were slandering the CAS report and saying, oh, that's not really the case. Don't listen to them. We're going to stay on the standard of care. And Dr. Cass was pretty much vilified
Mm-hmm.
and blacklisted.
Yeah.
from our professional community. I mean, one would hope that our conferences or organizations would go, whoa, this is not helping people. This is not helping with mental illness. We need to really look at the CAS report and dial this back. No, that's not what happened. What
Yeah.
happened was there was evidence to suggest that this whole thing was a ruse from the get-go that was rendered by the CAS report, and that did not stop them whatsoever.
And there were other reports out of Europe too, from Sweden, Finland, England. The Europeans have always been about 2 years, 2, 3 years ahead of us in
Isn't that funny?
implementing this stuff. Well,
Right.
somebody's got to be first. And,
Yeah.
so they've been a couple of years ahead of us in implementing gender affirming care. And now they're a couple of years ahead of us in tearing it down.
Right.
We're playing catch up.
Well,
And they're just ignoring everything that's coming out of there.
yes, and even I think United States did their own similar report paralleling the CAS report, and that didn't stop our community at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to blame it on who the president is.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
So they continue to claim that the standard of care version 8 represents evidence-based and consensus-based care. That last part just blows my mind. Consensus-based. If we get 10 people in a room who all believe a lie or came up with the lie and they say, yeah, 9 out of 10 doctors agree with this lie, does that make it a fact?
Well, apparently the DSM-6 is full of it. It's all consensus. So, our profession is really needing to come to grips with what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the DSM-6 got to where it is. All 1,000 pages of it. It's the consensus. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. You put 10 people in the room and you go around and go, okay, well, let's make this one up.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole WPATH thing has been fabricated from the get-go. And what's even more damning, the evidence does suggest the authors of Standard of Care 8, they actually privately acknowledged that their evidence was extremely weak.
Mm-hmm.
Think
Not
about
strong,
that for a
not
minute.
strong enough to cut body parts off, that's for sure. This whole thing is really a classic case of kings not wearing any clothes. The people in charge of the government came to a consensus that the standard of care is based on science. So the public's gone along with it, the public
Yes.
and the professionals. We're just waiting for the little boy to scream, he ain't got no clothes on.
Well, I think there's been a few people that have been screaming, and what has happened to the screamers, saying this is not
Yeah.
cool. Well, we've been blacklisted, vilified, threatened, all that.
The third of 4 pillars in the FTC's case is that independent reviews and guidelines reinforce that WPATH's recommendations and claims are unsupported by competent and reliable scientific evidence. In other words, third parties who have no dog in WPATH's little game are coming up with data-based science that says, this stuff there's no science behind it. There's no good data behind it.
That was a huge blow, Philip, reading in the suit. There was nothing. Let them
shows-
think in.
Yeah, it shows you how really relatively easy it is to hoodwink everybody. Yeah.
Can you imagine some of the counselors in our profession that have been hoodwinked? They're getting a big red pill right now, Philip. And my prayer for you is to wake the heck up and read the suit. You've been lied to. We have all been lied to. It's really disturbing. What was really disturbing too, Philip, I'm just going to go right there, is also in the suit were part of the testimonies that were entered into the suit. And they redacted their names, of course, but you can kind of guess who they are from the states. They're detransitioners.
It's very damning.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth claim is that WPATH falsely claims that pediatric medical transition is life-saving,
Yes.
in quotes, and in so doing, misrepresents the risks and benefits. This goes to informed consent, Your Honor.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was no informed consent.
This is
There
the
was no,
right.
here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly. They literally buried it because, again, the idea was to make serious cash for everyone that was involved, including the hospitals, including the surgeons, including the people who prescribed the blockers, including the actual, Philip, WPATH conferences that they have every year, including all the trainings that counselors do to write that stupid letter after one session. They give them the template. Here you go. This is a moneymaker for you because you can write these letters now for all these little kids and parents that are worried about their kid. So this was huge.
I want to make it clear there ain't nothing wrong with making a lot of money. It's how you go about it. If you're going to go about it using deceptive trade practices,
The
we have
Federal
a
Trade
problem.
Commission is there to stop you in a
Right.
big fat hurry.
So they've been using the claim that this stuff is life saving. Specific false and misleading claims also attacked puberty blockers are fully reversible. Want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's the lies. And this is what counselors are still saying. Puberty blockers are fully reversible. Cross sex hormones improve mental health. Improve mental health. Mastectomy, the top surgery, is safe and effective. And they were also purporting, hey, if you want to do reconstruction later, you can. But the harsh reality is when you do this, the top surgery on these little kids, you can't do the reconstruction because you're so damaged that you can't.
Reconstruct.
It's impossible.
You can't reconstruct nerve damage.
No. And then the interventions are medically necessary. They really, really pounded everybody's brain to say, well, this is medical necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're all scared about, oh, this is the standard of care. It must be, medically necessary. So I'm just going to, this is what we need to do without people doing their own research. And even when the research was dispelled to our counseling community, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
We were making it up. It wasn't true. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. You're all the words. You just don't understand. Oh, you're phobic about everything, and so that was the ammo.
You know how you ever watch these shows on TV about where cops might do a search without a warrant, and then the evidence that they find is not admissible because it's fruit of whatever they call it. Well,
Right.
WPATH and its members, they like to use would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son or some variation of that? It's emotional blackmail line with parents, which
Mhm.
the complaint treats as direct fruit. The standard of care is life-saving rhetoric.
Yes, this was the manipulation that was really, really grave for all counselors because that was the mantra that the people especially were writing the letters. And would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son? I mean, that is blackmail to the ultimate high
Right,
level.
right. It's emotional blackmail, and that's my point is that it only exists because the standard of care, which is not based on any science, birthed that.
Yes.
Ugh,
Yeah.
all right.
And
So
also, there
mhm,
was a direct failure. This is important. There's a direct failure to disclose or downplay the serious side effects that, like for instance, infertility, loss of sexual function, pelvic pain, incontinence, cardiovascular risk. That was downplayed very, very, very well. So they were not involved with really doing a true informed consent. Hey, here's some of the downsides of the puberty blockers. And actually, what they were telling parents is like, oh, it's totally reversible. Once you stop, it'll go right back. Well, if you listen to some of the testimonies of those who have been permanently scarred by the hormone and puberty blockers,
mhm.
you need to listen to that.
It's not the case. It's the same drug, I forget the name of it, but it's the same drug that they use in prisons to medically castrate
Yes.
certain individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sexual
yeah,
predators.
it's the same drug.
Yep.
It's not reversible. Ask those guys. It's not reversible. All right. By the way, that was chapter or section 8. I was wondering a moment ago was 5 or 8. It's 8. So 8 and 15 are the two big chapters in this complaint to focus on as far as what kind of ammo does the FTC really have. So let's go into there are 10 deceptive statements that are made by WPATH that WPATH normally utilizes in its narrative, and these 10 are outlined in the case. The first one, we're going to group the first two of them, is medically necessary and life-saving efforts against suicide.
It's medically necessary to prevent suicide. And this is an effective way to prevent suicide. I mean, again, this is emotional blackmail. I don't want my kid to die. I don't want my kid to kill himself or herself. So this is the deception and the emotional blackmail, I think. It's appalling.
Have the suicide rates changed amongst those who have transitioned? Have the suicide rates gone down?
I don't think so.
No.
Well, I don't even know if they did any research, Philip, on the suicide rates before gender affirming care. This is just the rhetoric.
Yeah.
This is for
Well,
rhetoric.
the FTC, as far as suicide rates, those suicide rates have remained elevated post transition, according to the FTC. That's what
Mm,
they're saying. So that the
right.
internal WPATH documents show that they knew this, despite the fact that the WPATH knew that there was no change. If anything, they've remained high, elevated, or gotten worse, but they still continued with their mantra. Number 3 on the list is puberty blockers are fully reversible. We've kind of covered that. They're not reversible. They're not reversible. Number 4 says cross-sex hormones improve mental health.
Right.
You have thoughts on that?
Well, this is just the 10 core deceptive statements that counselors have all been told, right? The
Mhm.
puberty blockers are fully reversible and the cross sex hormones improve mental health. Win win, without really even fully understanding, first of all, what are they for and what do they do? And it goes back to informed consent.
Mhm. The FTC claims that these are unsubstantiated false claims, that high quality evidence does not show reliable, lasting improvement in depression, anxiety, or suicidality. Comorbid mental health conditions are extremely common and often untreated. Hormones themselves can cause or worsen mood disturbances. But let's just claim that it improves your mental health. Number 5, breast amputations or mastectomies are safe, effective, and improve quality of life. What does the FTC claim about that, Ms. Mills?
The FTC says it's misrepresent. That's not even true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not safe. It's irreversible and it causes permanent nerve damage, period. Yeah. So,
Yep. The complications like necrosis, nerve damage, or inability to breastfeed. We know some people that
yes,
have
we
had this
do.
to them, and they've talked to us before
Yeah.
on tape about the nerve damage. Their chest hurts all the
All
time,
the time.
and you can't rebuild that. An
No.
inability to breastfeed, chronic pain, need for revisions are common evidence of long-term mental health benefit in minors is weak or absent, and calling it a strong recommendation based on high-quality evidence is false. Claim number 6 by the FTC, that SOC 8, Standard of Care 8, is an unbiased, evidence-based expert consensus. That's what WPATH claims.
And
And
we
the
just
FTC is saying,
no.
no, that the process was corrupted, conflicts of interest dominated, evidence grades were suppressed or removed. Delphi consensus, I'm not sure what that is. Do you know what Delphi consensus
No,
means?
I don't.
Big word to look up. Was bypassed on key issues, especially age limits. In other words, they applied these deceptive practices and beliefs to minors.
Mhm.
Dissenting evidence was sidelined. Are you noticing a pattern here? The big
Hope
word is
so.
deception. Yeah, political advocacy pressure overrode science. Chase the money. What could go wrong? Number 7, WPATH says it's the standard of care. Why is it the standard of care?
'Cause we
Because we
said
say it. That's right. And the FTC claims that that logic is circular and false. WPATH created the document, not based on science, then claimed it was the standard. Major European health systems and growing numbers of U.S. reviews reject that, and no genuine medical consensus exists. The claim is self-serving marketing. It's marketing as opposed to science.
this is the moneymaker, you know. This is how
Mm-hmm.
money is made. If I can deceive all the communities that are involved to get involved in order to make a lot of money, this is how we're going to do it.
Number 8 is the failure to disclose. There's another recurring theme. Failure to disclose puberty blocker side effects, hot flashes, lethargy, cognitive problems.
So if I'm
Yep.
having cognitive problems, I'm probably going to be in counseling for a really long time.
Yeah.
Another
Wonder
moneymaker for our
for the
people.
industry.
Yeah.
I started to go here a minute ago and I sidetracked myself about downstream. If you're listening to this or reading the materials, and if you're thinking rather than just blindly accepting what you're told, and I'm a counselor that's written these letters before that greenlit this stuff, I'm shaking in my boots.
Yep.
There's already been cases, already been lawsuits where the counselors who greenlit this thing have been thumped for large sums of money,
Yes.
career ending sums of money.
Yes. So you won't ever escape the civil lawsuit with this. Something to
Number
think about.
Number 9 claim is that a failure to disclose, there's that term once again, cross-sex hormone side effects.
Here we
Mood,
go.
yep, mood changes, you're vocal. The first time you and I met somebody that had all this done to them and she opened her mouth and sounded like a he, I'm going to tell you the truth, that was totally unnerving. That was
It was gut-wrenching.
It was unsettling. I felt sorry for the girl. Anyway, so a failure to disclose the side effects, mood, vocal, pelvic. Can you imagine your pelvic region hurting permanently?
100% of the time. 100% of
And
the time.
sexual dysfunction? The FTC says the same logic applies here. It's persistent sexual dysfunction, incontinence, pain, and mood effects are well documented. We've done 2 or 3 of these interviews with Dr. Melanie Kreitz-Bachert, who's a pelvic surgeon,
Yep.
and she goes into great, embarrassing detail on how these surgeries are done and the complications, how they make new parts, where they get the materials from to make these parts, the damage that occurs. And this is not just a it only happens 1 out of 100 times. No, 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 no. This is every time.
The thing that bothers me a lot about the surgeries and the reconstructions, top and bottom, especially the bottom surgeries, are they're making this up as they go.
The surgeons will tell you that.
The surgeons have
They
never
will.
done this before, and they're making it up as they go. Would you consent to that kind of procedure? Hey, you're a guinea pig. We don't know what we're doing, but, we'll do the best we can.
We're the smart kids in the class. We've always been the smart kids in the class. We're wearing white lab coats. Trust us.
Yeah, trust us. Trust the
And,
science and trust us.
and we're lapping that up like,
Yeah. The 10th one, Philip, I'm just gonna, because I've never heard it this way, but you need to probably think about it. But WPATH also fails in the standard of care 8 to adequately disclose certain effects of breast amputations.
mhm.
When I saw that and read that, it just took me back. That's what it is. They're
Yeah.
amputating people's parts and then reconstructing it to the other sex, which is, I find it not comical, but cognitive dissonance.
Mm.
You're a girl getting amputated on so you could be a boy.
Yeah, you're having your physical
There's only
altered to
2
match a
sexes.
mental delusion.
Yes. This includes the ability to breastfeed. There's nerve damage all over a chest and necrosis of the nipples. I can't even imagine that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I guess the deception is not just, a piece of the procedure. It's from start to it never finishes. These
Mhm.
are patients for life. What happens after the transition? You're a patient for life. This is a moneymaker for counselors, for medical doctors to treat the damage that will never go away. It's
Mhm.
not just the gender, it's just not the hormones and the surgeries.
It's not one and done.
The money maker is you have patients for life.
They're developing an annuity is what they're doing. Dr. Melanie explained, and we have to go back and listen to that to get the exact details, but she
Mhm.
explained, there's a series of professionals in the procedure, in the process, and each one of them in the future gets a cut based on future care.
Yes.
So everybody in the process is building an annuity.
Yes.
Every certain,
Everybody gets a piece of the pie
right,
because you're in the
permanent
club.
in perpetuity.
Correct.
So these 10 statements that we just went over are not random. They call it the kill shot list. This is the 10 items that they're going to have. And even if the judge that's over the case, even if he buys just a majority of these arguments, they can still win the case. They don't have to go 10 for 10.
Right.
Just a majority will do the trick, and the FTC and the 4 states win the case. So these 10 statements are not random. It's the bulk of WPATH's narrative.
Hey, if you buy into this, counselor, you can not only write the letters and make pretty good money for the actual letter, that client, the potential of being a client for life through the whole process, post and beyond. Think about that.
And these 10 statements appear repeatedly in their standard of care and WPATH public materials. They're repeated almost verbatim by clinicians to parents. Where does the counselor, where does the string of doctors that are involved in the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones and then the surgeons and then the physical therapist, where do they all get their talking points and their marketing materials? It's from WPATH.
Yes.
You kill the Death Star, and then downstream, they don't know what their script is anymore. And that entity that was giving them credibility is gone. Oh, that's the downstream stuff, the good stuff, he said gleefully, that we're going to talk about next week. Any final thoughts on this stuff?
Just thinking about this just causes much emotions. I told you and a couple of other people that at our last conference that night that we had Dr. Melanie Kreitzbacher
Mm-hmm.
and the detransitioners on stage, and we're talking about it. I mean, to this day, I was deeply, deeply impacted. I can still remember everything from that evening. And then when I was sitting at the bar with one of them and we talked for a really long time. But if you've never seen the process, please do. Counselors, if you've never seen a breast amputated, if you've never seen the surgery, what takes place for bottom surgery,
In
you
both
need
genders.
you need to watch it and let that help you. And if you still think it's a good idea, okay,
Good luck.
good luck. So, counselors who have been vilified, blacklisted, and threatened because we knew the truth from the get go, keep pressing on
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not afraid, and neither should you. And this lawsuit right here is your ticket to understanding totally the brevity of what has been allowed to occur. And many, many families have been destroyed by this.
I will admit, and you need to write this down, that you understood this better than I did last year when the conference was over and we were talking the following week about what do we need to do next year for the conference? What does the theme need to be? And you said it needs to be about informed consent. And I thought at the time that, okay, that's a little narrow, but I was wrong. It's not narrow. It's the crux of the whole thing here.
Yeah, we don't do informed consent with the medications that our patients are on. That's my job now because I know that the psychiatrists aren't doing it.
But I didn't go to
They're the
school for
primary
that.
care physicians for that matter.
I didn't go to school for that.
I don't care. There's ways to do it. You need to look it up. It's very easy to do. We were taught how to do that last year, if you recall, because that's part of the puzzle, Philip. If my patient who walks in the door is on 6 medications, I'm going to need to know about that because that's probably affecting his mental well being. And sure enough, you look at all those side effects, it's like, well, the reason why you're not sleeping or the reason why you're anxious or and then what are you eating? The whole thing. But
Right.
medications are not the solution. They
We
are
had
a Death Star in their own right.
We had Dr. Brian Artis last year, and he was talking about this very specific thing, the drugs that are coming that you're seeing in your office and how to look them up and how to find out what the side effects are and so forth. He taught you how to do that last year. This year, Dr. Art Copes, he's going to stand on that and move to the next step. He called me earlier this week and he said, Philip, I need a top 10 list of medications counselors are seeing in their session rooms. I said, okay. So I rounded up about 20 emails of 20 counselors I know, and I sent out a little survey and I said, I need top 10, thinking each one of them would give me 3 or 4 and sputter and not never get to 10. That's what I thought. I'll get 3 or 4 from half of these people and I got a list and we can go from there. I got about 8 or 10 people responded and each one of them had 20 to 30 drugs listed, stuff I never heard of before. And most of I can't spell. And it was just jaw dropping. It's like, how are these people even alive? And a few of them commented that most of their clients were on multiple. It's not just one. It was just Vyvanse. No, it was Vyvanse and blah and blah and blah. Good Lord. And they still found your office? It's crazy. Dr. Art Copes, he'll be doing a lengthy discussion on drugs and informed consent. The whole conference is centered around informed consent. Informed consent, the lack of, is another phrase for deception, which is what the entire FTC WPATH case is about. So the timeline on this thing, and we'll get into this next week when we talk about the downstream effects, but the timeline, I will say that it's about a 2-year timeline before this thing even gets to a court.
Right.
So it's likely that the trial will be in 2028, which is fine. It is what it is. Do the discovery, get it right. They're not likely to settle on this thing. It's not likely. This is a trophy case. Not only are there careers to be made by the FTC attorneys on this one, but the federal government wants to be able to point at this and make a case. They don't want this to go away and be settled in some dark back room somewhere. It's possible. It's not probable based on what we have in front of us so far. This thing will be happening in 2028, which gives us 2 years to follow along and see what happens. WPATH is still very defiant. They've published their own response to this case.
That was
which
pretty
is
stark.
Comical is the word.
It's comical, but it doesn't surprise me. Similar to somebody taking the fifth the other day, 112 times. I mean, honestly.
Right. Yeah. We'll start out with that next week, but they largely framed their defense in their public statement as a First Amendment right.
Didn't they lose that argument before this lawsuit came out?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, they said that their standard of care was a free speech issue and somebody struck it down, and that's why it went to this
Mm,
particular suit.
I don't know. We'll find out, though. We'll
Okay.
find out.
Anyways, yeah, free speech. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, you can believe and you can say anything you want to until you hurt somebody else or break the
Yes.
law,
And
and
and I think
they're
that's
doing
why
all of that.
yeah, and that's why FTC is in on it because they can't deny that many people have been harmed. Like, it's very well documented.
All right. So if you want to get involved in advocacy in your state, you can do like we're doing. There's a link in the show notes to the Austin Barbecue Club. If you're in Texas and you want to go to Austin periodically with us to talk to the board or just listen to the board, be seen by the board, you can find out all about that on the Austin Barbecue Club page. And what else is coming up? Oh, yeah. There's a conference coming up in October. It's a lot of fun. And again, this year's theme is centered around informed consent, informing your patients so that they can make the right decisions. So find it in your budget and your heart to come see us at the conference. I think you'll be informed and educated and empowered. And we eat pretty good too. Yes, we do. Hey, things are changing. Things are happening, folks. If you don't see anything happening, you're not looking hard enough. But we appreciate you carving out another hour to be with us this week. And I need you to be good.